All right, another episode of the Scoring Compass podcast. This time, for the first time, but hopefully not the last time, at least virtually, I am visiting New Jersey, Jersey, with Right Worshipful Brother Moses Gomez of the Grand Lodge of New Jersey. He's the Grand Historian, past master. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Good morning, brother. Good to be here early in the morning.
It is early in the morning, and you are making me look bad in your suit and tie. You're very fancy over in Jersey.
Well, I wanted to represent the my sovereign Grand Master and his staff. We're wearing his regalia, his tie, and stuff, and I just wanted to look appropriate for discussing AMD Week and Allied Masonic degrees.
Yeah, no, you're definitely. I don't know. I'm trying to think. You might not be the winner for the best dressed, but you're the winner for the best dressed considering the time.
Well, for me, it's actually dinner because I just got off of work, working all night. So for me, it's my afternoon, my evening. So I'll be catching some Z's after I'm done with this episode because I'm leaving for AMB tomorrow for the week tomorrow. So I'll be getting a little bit of rest later and then getting ready for tomorrow's journey for the beginnings of AMD Week this coming week.
I mean, you're going to need the rest for sure. I will leave a link to Masonic Week in the description for this video. There's still time. I mean, this will be posted today on the February 6th, so there's still a couple of days if you want to make it to Jersey. Registration's still open. I saw on the website the registration form is still there.
The registration form is open. The week is still open. It will be occurring in Crystal City, Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia, right adjacent to the Reagan National Airport. Registration is open. However, we ask that you either pay electronically or you pay when you arrive because there's just not enough time for mail-ins by check or registration by mail to be received. The Grand Secretary will be leaving on Monday as well and arriving on Tuesday, and I'll be leaving, like I said, tomorrow. So it's still open. All the contact information is on the website, amd-usa.org. You go there and visit. You can visit the hotel registration link. You can visit the registration for the meals or degrees or all the events throughout the whole week. There's a schedule there that outlines all the events that are happening throughout the week. And you can also, there's forms there you can click on and fill out the registration form and follow the instructions. But again, my contact information is at the bottom. So if there's any questions or concerns, you can reach out to me by mobile or email.
And yeah, everybody check it out. Links again down in the description. One other thing I'll mention, the link in the description before we start the interview proper, is this is being released on February 6th, 6 p.m. Eastern, which means anybody watching this, you still have time to nominate the Windsor Masonic Temple, my home Masonic Temple, under the Best of Windsor Essex Awards for Best Heritage Space. Make sure to do that, get the chance, hit pause on this and go over there and nominate the Masonic Temple because it really is one of the best things in Windsor Essex, and I always want to promote the temple. With that, Right Worshipful Sir, let me start with, I guess, kind of how I came to contact you and why I wanted to talk to you. What is Masonic Week in general, and what is planned for Masonic Week 2022?
Well, my brother, Masonic Week is a coordinated week of smaller appendant Masonic bodies that don't have the large means of holding an annual communication. If you remember of Grand Lodge and you go to your own grand institution, or you have these grand events, they usually have their own annual meeting where they discuss the policies and issues. They discuss bylaws and any changes. They elect new officers, as any grand jurisdiction would have. But some of the smaller appendant bodies don't have the means because they're much smaller. So we try to group many of them together during this week. And they come here, and as a conglomeration of all these little groups, we form a week-long or 4 or 5 day long event. COVID has hindered us a little bit this year, but we're still moving forward with the event this week. But it's a smaller appendant bodies that are designed primarily for educational purposes. A lot of them are invitational bodies. into Masonry. So they come here for this week. And we've been here going on almost 90 years now. We've been meeting in the DC, Alexandria area for that many years. It started back in 1932, and we officially came into being in 1934 when we started meeting in DC. We've moved around a bit from hotel to hotel, but it is an interesting week. The most important part is you get to meet brethren from all over the world. We have a lot of these dependent bodies that are in many other parts of the world, not just the United States. So it's really nice to have fellowship of brethren from across the country and from many parts of the world as well that come to join us at this week here, because many of these other countries do have the same groups that we have here.
And what has it been like? You mentioned COVID. I'm not sure if you had Masonic Week last year, or even, it's hard to remember how long COVID has been going, but what's it been like this year, especially trying to organize it, considering I don't know what the restrictions are like in New Jersey with travel requirements, things of that nature. Just what's it been like organizing it under kind of the current circumstances?
Well, last year we did have to cancel because, again, most of the country was on the lockdown. You weren't allowed to have meetings. Federal, state, and local regulations forbade anybody from meeting. So we had to cancel it last year. This year, we went ahead towards the end of last year in 2021. We started planning for the 22 Masonic event week here. And we were some challenges because, again, we have to abide by local, state, and federal guidelines, and everybody changed a little bit. Again, this will take place in Alexandria, Virginia. And for instance, on January 15th, the District of Columbia decided to enact mask mandates and the vaccination cards. So again, every county is a little different. Virginia has not done so. Alexandria has not done so. They recommend you do, but it's not a requirement. And some of the issues we had to deal with as well is to also protect our members. We understand that we follow, as Masons, we follow the laws of our land and the government, the laws of our government. But again, they are recommendations, but we also have to think of the positive side and also think of the well-being of our brethren to try to protect them as best as we can. So we have instituted a COVID policy that was created by the Grand Council of the Allied Masonic Degrees, along with the many appendant bodies that meet there that week. And we came together with a policy to try to protect the brethren as best as possible. Again, the hotel is not requiring it. The city, state is not requiring it of Virginia nor Alexandria. But we felt it prudent to at least put in place some regulations, some minor restrictions to keep the brethren safe as well. But this year we are moving forward. We did have a few groups drop out because their parent organization decided to not meet, not just here, but around the world. But again, we are doing very well. This is probably going to be one of the biggest years. I've been doing this for 9 years as chairman of the AMD Week, organizing and putting it together. And this is probably going to be one of the biggest years. We've had a lot of numbers, a lot of registrants. We're still getting them. Last night I was at work and still receiving emails and texts from people registering. So we are doing very well. We have it looks like it's going to be a good year. It's going to be a good turnout. So we expect a nice amount of brethren from around the world that are coming. The international brothers that are coming from many parts of the world, their requirements are a little bit more stringent than ours because foreigners entering the United States have to have a 24-hour COVID check or test to make sure that they come back negative, and that is a requirement to enter. And then there's also regulations for them to return to their own country, whatever that regulation may be. Some require 72 hours. Again, like some require 24 hours, but they will also be tested on the way back to ensure that they are safe and are negative going back home. So it's been a little bit of a struggle. It's been a little bit of a policy. You know, people wear masks, don't want to wear masks. Everybody's got their own political ideology and issues. But at the end of the day, what's important is that we meet as brethren and we meet as safely as possible. And that's what's important, to keep everybody as safe as possible and to still have a wonderful time with the brethren at large.
So you mentioned, this phrase a few times, AMD, or, Allied Masonic degrees, which is not really something I've covered much at all on the podcast so far. Talk about what are the Allied Masonic degrees?
Well, the Allied Masonic degree was a organization that it's had its early start here in 1892, and they were actually called the Allied Masonic degree and Christian degrees here. That actually started in Norway, Maine, and they got their ritual from Europe, in particular from Scotland. Later on, in 1931, 1932, a brother by the name of Raymond Shute from Monroe, North Carolina, organized and received the charters from the Grand Royal Arch chapter of Scotland. Many of these degrees were actually have been kind of been deregulated or not actually have been kind of put aside, but they were degrees that were actually used in craft masonry or in Royal Arch masonry as well. And they got their charter to start here. And then in 1933, they realized that there was another body working in Maine, and the brother from North Carolina visited Maine, and they were able to come together and unite the two orders together in 1933 in a meeting they had in Richmond, Virginia, and they had another one in Alexandria. And at the second annual meeting of the Allied Masonic degrees, they unified it, and that happened in 1934 in Washington, D.C., and it's been there ever since. So it's an organization, an independent body that deals with study and education. It's more of a study group. It's designed to be kept small. We limit the numbers to 27 members per council. However, you can have as many councils as you want in the state. There's no regulation or rules limiting that. But it's one to preserve these old ancient craft degrees and Royal Arch degrees that are not being used anymore. And also to further educate the brethren in this craft of masonry and its symbology, its allegorical stories, its history, to preserve it, to keep it, and to pass it along. It is an invitational body, meaning that you have to be invited to join this group, and as well as many other organizations that meet at AMD Week. But AMD Week is probably one of the fastest growing of the smaller independent bodies in the United States. I think our most venerable Sovereign Grand Master charted quite a few councils in his year during his term this year, which runs from February to February. He will be this is his session. He'll be stepping out on Saturday, February 12th, and the new Grand Master will be installed as long as his officers as well.
You mentioned 27 members per council. There's no limit on the number of councils you can have. How many councils exist right now in New Jersey, for example? Or is it one per state? I believe
we have about 10 in New Jersey. And nationwide, we do have quite a bit. I mean, there's several hundred across the whole country that we do have. And we also have chartered and expanded throughout. Like, for instance, we had granted councils in Romania. And then back in 2014, I believe we gave Romania its own sovereignty. So just like any other grand jurisdiction, the jurisdictions issue charters and warrants. The different lodges could be a military lodge, could be a traveling lodge, could be a lodge overseas on a military base. And again, AMB has that authorization to do that by its own invested power. And we had actually granted some councils in Romania, and then we gave them their own sovereignty by creating them their own sovereign Grand Council of Romania and electing their own sovereign Grand Master, who, by the way, will be traveling this week to visit us again. And again, there's other countries around the world like Brazil and Philippines that are also trying to establish AMD, try to build the councils up. And eventually, when they have enough, then the Grand Council can actually issue them their own sovereignty, meaning that they become a sovereign Grand Council, just like we have here and in England and in many parts of the world.
I mean, there's you've said hundreds of councils nationwide in the States, not counting international. But generally, in your experience, anyways, as a invitational or invitation based body, what would you say the AMD looks for, or a council looks for, when considering inviting a brother to join the Allied Masonic degree?
Well, we try to we look for, of course, quality, but we look for leadership, we look for mentorship, we look for individuals that are eager to get involved in education, getting themselves and preserving the history of masonry and talking with degrees. There's many facets of masonry. I mean, everybody joins masonry, many people join masonry, and everybody finds their own avenue, their path. It could be fellowship, it could be social. There's no wrong answer, there's no wrong way. But again, this is a more of a study educational group. Sometimes it could be a little bit esoterical. So we try to look for like-minded brethren that enjoy this type of field and enjoy this type of studies and enjoy this type of education. You have to present papers, you have to write papers. So it involves doing a little bit of research. It involves doing, a lot of background search. It involves presenting papers, writing papers. So it could be a little bit more educational based. It could be a little bit more research based. So as we are members of different lodges and different organizations, you keep an eye out for individuals that, maybe enjoy speaking and enjoy lecturing, enjoy doing research, enjoy presenting papers on their own. I mean, that's how I got invited, because I was speaking early on in smaller lodges here in New Jersey, and some of the brethren recognized and realized, well, he likes to do papers, he likes to do research, he likes to present lectures, and maybe he's a good prospective candidate for our group. And that's what we try to look at. Like I said, everybody has their own avenue when you join masonry. Of course, once you get in, the question of to ask one, be one kind of goes by the wayside, because then every Masonic appendant body throws the doors open and throws you petitions, join here and there and whatever. They try to pull you now because the door's open, the floodgates are open, you're free game. But some of these smaller invitational bodies are designed for that purpose alone, to try to pick individuals that are right for that particular group.
Going back to Masonic Week 2022, what's it been like? I'm not sure in the States. I have traveled a fair bit to the States recently, just in Denver, for example, for the Grand Lodge there. The organization, or not the organization, but like working with the city, the hotels, the different locations within and around the venue. Like, it seems to me, and this is something I've argued on the podcast before, Masonic events, whether it be a Masonic Week, a Masonic Con, even a Grand Lodge annual communication, it's a great opportunity for Masons to, when they're in these cities, traveling to these cities, it's a great chance for Freemasons to support that city and support the businesses of that city, the economy of the city. I mean, there could be, significant amounts of revenue generated from a Masonic event if it's big enough and large enough. So just what's it been like working with the hotels, the city, the venues, in organizing Masonic Week 2022?
Well, 2022 again has proved to be a little bit of a roadblock because of the pandemic. And as I said, in Alexandria, there are no restrictions, but yet if you cross 3 miles into the District of Columbia, we have restrictions now. It does bring in income into the communities and into the areas or the cities you belong. We tried to stick to the same area. We've been in Alexandria now at the same hotel for quite a few years now, for over 6 years. But since we started 88 years ago, we've been in the DC, Alexandria, Arlington area. We really haven't ventured far from there. So we meet every year pretty much in the same area. We did sign a 3-year contract, so we will be here for the next 3 years following this Masonic Week of 2022. So we will be at the same hotel and same location. That also helps because for myself and my staff and those that are actually in the day-to-day running and organizing, it makes it easier for us because we know the hotel, we know the lay of the land. Believe it or not, sometimes people laugh. They come in and, I walk down the hallway and some of the housekeepers will come by. Hi, Mr. Gomez. Good to see you again. And so people say even the housekeepers know you, Mo. But that's good because, you become friendly with them. They know you, and you can always ask for a favor, always ask for something where the ice is already broken and that friendship, that bond is established there. And it does help reciprocate both ways. So it does help us quite a bit. In terms of helping the community out, I mean, we arrange for not just everything in the hotel, the banquets, but we also arrange for private events outside of our venue here in the hotel. So many individuals will say, Mo, we're coming in for the week. Can you give us a place where we can go have a little private dinner on our downtime? So we do book many dinners and private events at local restaurants and local venues throughout the area. We also support many of the local establishments, like, for instance, the Arlington National Cemetery. We will be the Grand Master will be placing a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier there. So again, it's a two-way street. You give and you take, and the brethren that come from overseas, of course, many of them come every year. Many of them are new, and of course, DC offers a huge venue of opportunities to visit many locations, many museums, many historical sites there. So it does reciprocate in both ways. Because of where we are situated, it helps us because it offers the brethren that are visiting here and their ladies an opportunity to not just spend the whole time in a hotel, but to go outside and visit and tour a little bit and visit these establishments, support these establishments in the local community as well. So it works both ways. And like I said, it's been a little bit of a work this year because of the pandemic, but we're making it work. We're looking forward to this week. At least I'm really eager for it, even though for me, my favorite day is the last day because I can actually breathe then. Every day from here on in, starting tomorrow, is a very, very busy ordeal. I'm usually downstairs at 6:30, and I usually don't go to bed till about 12:30, 1 o'clock. So it's a very hectic week, but we enjoy it, and we're here to serve the brethren that are coming, and that's our goal is to make everyone comfortable, everybody feel welcomed, have an enjoyable time, have the fellowship. I mean, we come for business. We come for the meetings that we have to, many of us belong to these groups that have to be had here in order to keep these organizations rolling. But really what comes down to is we're here for the fellowship. We're here to meet old friends that we don't get to see often, maybe once a year, and also make new ones as new brethren come to visit AMD Week, Masonic Week. And it is growing. Every year it grows a little bit more as we diversify, we bring in different groups. And we're also trying to make it convenient for the non-invitational brothers. I know a lot of the groups here that meet are invitational. So a lot of the brothers may say, well, what is it for me, Mo? If I don't belong to these groups, I can't ask to be in these groups. So what is it? What's the value for me of going there, spending airfare and spending monies on meals and hotel nights? But again, one of the most incredible aspects of Masonic Week is the camaraderie and the fellowship that you meet, the bonds you make with brethren from all over the world. And that's a real important connection that we do here, socializing around the world, bringing that global fraternity of Masonry together, which what it is. And that's a way of communicating. And it's a wonderful experience. I mean, anytime you can meet new brethren and meet old ones, to reunite again, that's real special. I think that's the real bond of Masonic Week. That's what you really get when you get there. And we're also diversifying a little bit so that the average brother can visit and attend some of these organizations there, even if they're not members, even if they're not belong to an invitational body, but at least they get to experience a little bit. There are some groups that are open to all brethren. You don't even have to be members. You can just attend the dinners or the banquets or the meals without even being a member. And there's some groups there that you can just visit and hear their lectures. For instance, the Nine Muses, they meet. That's open to everybody. So there's opportunities for all brethren and their ladies. We do even stuff for the ladies. We have a ladies' breakfast. We have a ladies' tea, afternoon tea, so that they're not just stuck in a hotel waiting for their husbands to come down after 8-9 hours of meeting all day long. So it gives them an opportunity to do something as well. And many of the ladies reunite and after not seeing each other for a whole year, and they also have that special bond as well. So it's a wonderful experience. And I think what I've enjoyed most of it in all these years, and especially the years before that when I was just attending as an attendee, I think the greatest takeaway I got was the fellowship and the bonds that you make with brethren from all over the world that you may not always get to see on a daily basis. Like when you go home to your own home lodge, in your own district, in your own jurisdiction, we get to see each other all the time. These are brethren that come from many parts of the country and around the world. And maybe that's your only opportunity to get to have some fellowship with that individual. That's very special. I think that's the biggest takeaway that most people take away when they leave A&D week. It's that those connections and that fellowship they make.
Switching over to kind of another hat you wear, we mentioned at the start, you are the Grand Historian for the Grand Lodge of New Jersey, or Historian for the Grand Lodge New Jersey. So tell me a little bit about that, like how long you've been the historian and how you came to hold that position, and just what is it you most enjoy about being the historian for the Grand Lodge?
Well, I first became appointed to Grand Staff as Grand Historian in 2015 under Most Worshipful Anthony Montori. And since then, I've been Grand Historian for a total of almost 7 years now. So and I think the position was started here in 1928 by a brother who was David McGregor, who was really enthralled with the history and the background of our fraternity, especially here in New Jersey. And he was instrumental in creating some of the earliest and first books on the history of Freemasonry here in New Jersey, in this part of the world. So he really opened the Pandora's box. He opened that door. But the best thing I like about Grand Historian is that I'm able to plan special events. I'm able to organize special events for the Grand Master. A lot of times we'll have, this year we're planning trips to go to Gettysburg. We plan trips to go down to DC and visit some of the areas there, and then lay a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. But we also get to plan special events dealing with cornerstone dedications or rededication of a lodge, or a corn wine oil dedication ceremony, or maybe the lodge is celebrating 200th anniversary or 200th year as craft masonry. So these are all events that I get to participate and help organize, put together. The also important part is that many will, even non-Masons will send messages to either the Grand Lodge office or the Grand Secretary, and then it gets forwarded to myself. And they'll ask about, we knew about our great uncle who we never got to meet, but he was a Mason, and we found some documents going through old archives at home, and it's very special to be able to backtrack and research that information and be able to give that family a little bit of sense of history on what that person actually did. And it was a wonderful story where I had was contacted by a brother and sister. They were nephew and niece of their great uncle, who they never met. He died tragically here in a construction accident, but they found some documents and items about him being a Mason. Now, going back 50, 60, 70 years and even older, many dads and uncles were Masons, and really, your children never knew about it. They knew your father got dressed up and left maybe a couple times a month, but it was really never spoken about. And they really didn't know much about the Masonry. They didn't know much about their uncle. And I was able to track down, within a month or so, I was able to track down actually how he died, what lodge he belonged to, which was my mother lodge. That he was where the most important part is that they didn't know where he was. Where was he buried? Whatever happened to him, okay, he died, but what was the outcome and where was he buried? And our lodge records were, a lot of times Masonic lodges and Masonic organizations keep very detailed information and records and minutes. And I was able to backtrack the history of this brother in the lodge, where he came from, and most importantly, how he died in a construction accident in Jersey City, New Jersey. And it goes on to say that the brethren of the lodge were there for this deceased brother. They gave him his last rites, and that his last wish was to be cremated and his ashes scattered at sea, as he was a lifelong fisherman and enjoyed fishing in the sea. So being able to share that experience and to share that little bit of information with the two individuals that were looking about his uncle really brought them to tears. So it felt like I fulfilled a part of their life and closing a chapter in their life of a person who was in their family who they never met. They were born after he passed away, but still no less was their uncle. And then I was able to bring a little closure to them because of his connections with Masonry, because he was a Mason in good standing and was a part of the fraternity. So those are the kind of moments. And of course, if you can ever get to find something unique and new that no one's ever been brought to light. You always find that little story that comes out, a particular event or a particular occurrence that happened here in the States or New Jersey, and then you fact find, and you do some more digging, and then you find out that there's a whole story behind this that may have never been told. And as a historian, it's our job to bring that story to light, and keep it for posterity, so that future generations can look back as we do today. When we look back at all these books that have been written about masonry for the last couple hundred years, those brethren did the same fact-finding research that we are doing today. And that's, for me, that's probably the most gratifying part of being in masonry and being grand historian, is to do that kind of research, to be able to backtrack and track down events that have happened, people who were involved. And that's, to me, I just enjoy that, be able to open up a new door in masonry and be able to bring new light to a new particular event that might have happened that maybe no other Mason was aware of, or they didn't make that connection before.
This has been my own kind of personal ballywick over the last, for about a year now, give or take. Something I've been trying to push in my own jurisdiction, in my own Masonic temple. But it became more, I think, obvious to more people, maybe, kind of this issue and what I'm trying to do when it just happened, the Zanesville, Ohio Masonic Temple fire, and the loss of historical items and artifacts, including correspondence, letters, documents. I've spent the last year working on some grant applications, one of them being for a grant application to, digitize the archives in my Masonic temple. Not only whenever people talk about that, the assumption is automatically, correspondence, minutes, letters, which is all very important things to digitize, but also, all the pictures hanging on the walls, even some of the Masonic artifacts or items that are in some of the display cases, getting a digital recording of those. I guess as a historian in New Jersey, what are your thoughts on not only, obviously, you have to take care of the physical items themselves, making sure they don't get wet or damaged by any, damage for the elements, keeping them out of light, things like that, especially the older documents, but also, taking the time for lodges, whether it be at the lodge level, a temple, a Masonic building, or even Grand Lodge, to look at digitally archiving some of these documents. So, knock on wood, if there is some type of disaster or flooding or whatever it is, that at least the information is recorded digitally if it gets damaged in the physical form.
Well, it's very important, brother. I mean, I think the most important part of a historian is to document what's happened currently, so that future generations can see what we have done, right, wrong, or indifferent. But it's also important to maintain the historical past, because who we are is who we were. And without that history, without knowing where we came from, there is no organization, there is no future. That is who we are. And there's an old saying that if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And if you don't write your history, someone else is going to write it for you. So it's very important to protect artifacts. I know the Grand Lodge of New Jersey is in the process of digitizing all their proceedings. We have almost every lodge has a copy, but again, it's important to digitize it. It's easier for access. And that's where we go back to research. When a question arises, back in 2018, the past Grand Master Roger Quintana was in the process of getting some of these clandestine lodges to become part of the Grand Lodge of New Jersey. But many of these brethren were Spanish-speaking, Portuguese-speaking lodges. And he had asked me once, he goes, did we ever do this before? Have a lodge speak in other than native tongue other than English? And I said, yes, in the 1850s, we had Spanish-speaking, we had French-speaking. Later on in 1900s, we had German-speaking lodges as well. So the only way we're able to know that is by being able to research the past history of what those individuals put down on paper and preserved and kept. Unfortunately, the ravages of time are not, are not fair and kind to our documents and our relics. Like you said, it could be weather related, it could be water damage, it could be a fire like that beautiful building that burned down in Ohio. But again, it's important to be able to keep these documents and preserve them. The most important ones, to be able to keep them properly stored, properly maintained, or even properly kept in a safe or secured, so that even if the ravages of fire do affect them, at least they're protected. But digitizing and keeping account of what we have is the only way to preserve masonry for the future. I think that's very important. Now, of course, could we digitize a gavel? We could take a picture of it and scan it. We can't. We're not going to replicate that artifact, because that's what it is. I mean, you could say that gavel's been in your lodge for 200 years. That's special. It can't be replaced. But there's always ways to protect, these artifacts and these relics, even from sunlight. Just keep them away from the sunlight, from direct light from the window. But it's very important to preserve it. I've always been behind that. And the only reason I've been able to find and know what I know today is because of what our brethren did in the past. And that's important, and we need to continue that going forward. Now, with the age of modern technology and computers and scanning and digital, there's no reason why we all shouldn't do it, especially those lodges that don't have a concise history. That's even more reason why you should do that, because it gives a history to your brethren in your lodge. There's a lot of lodges that don't have a concise history. They don't know, where they were, where they might have, what other building they might have been in. Many don't know the exact dates. So it's very important to study that history, formulate it, consolidate it, put it together, and then digitize it. But even more so digitizing, it's very important to put together all that history. And it starts at your local level, state level, jurisdictional wide and nationwide and globally, but it starts at home, and you need to create that and then be able to protect that. Unfortunately, many lodges don't even have, like I said, a history of their own lodge. And it's a lot of times is word of mouth or hearsay. And we know what I tell you now, you pass it down the room, tell the next person. By the time it gets to the last guy or back around to you, the message you put out is not what comes back to you. So it's important to keep accurate minutes, keep accurate documents, categorize it, catalog it, and make a concise history up until that point. And then, of course, protect it by digitizing, which will be, protected forever. I mean, you can send it in an email, put it on a USB stick, but then it's there for everybody. Once it's on the internet and once it's on a web, it's there secured for life. You'll never have to worry about it disappearing.
And yeah, I like what you said there, right? It really does all start at the lodge level, especially when it comes to like all the administrative stuff, keeping minutes and setting out your summons, and all that secretary and treasurer work and worshipful master. Not relying on the Grand Lodge necessarily to, not thinking, well, the Grand Lodge will have the history there. We can get it when we need it, but it's up to the lodge itself to maintain its records first and foremost. And if they're not being maintained, start maintaining them. Don't start a committee, because nothing gets done with the committee. Just pick a couple guys and roll up your sleeves and go through the record books and start trying to organize it, right? Because how many lodges out there have minute books in different brothers' houses, or not kept in any type of order, just strewn about their building? It's important at the lodge level to get started and not rely. The Grand Lodge can be a resource for your local lodge, but it's up to the lodge itself to maintain its records for Grand Lodge, not the other way around.
No, absolutely. It starts there. Grand Lodge could be a guide and a help and be a help to you in pursuing those avenues, but it's important to do that. And a lot of times, like you said, even going back 100 or 150 years ago, there weren't these magnificent temples, and brethren would take the secretary would take those minutes home. Now, the brethren might have gotten old and maybe a new secretary took over, never transferred those minutes to them. And then over the years, the distance becomes great between that brother who was the secretary and the lodge. And then you'll find somebody maybe 50 years later that went through their great grandfather's house before they sold it and found all these dusty old books. And luckily, many do return to some Masonic home, hopefully back home. But unfortunately, a lot of them get thrown away because people, maybe there is no family member who was a Mason after that person, and that distance, separates that time distance separates that. But again, it's important to keep these minutes. It's important to write them down, and it's important to maintain them within the lodge setting. But again, this is part of what a historian does, is to research and backtrack this. There are many lodges that unfortunately have suffered damage or have suffered fires or casualties, but there's still ways of retracing your steps and retracing your history, not going directly through a minute book. Many lodges will receive a call from someone from a family who maybe their deceased grandfather, or maybe they, their parents passed away and they're going to sell the house, and they found these Masonic dues cards and a couple of aprons, and they'll hand it back in. And many times I've seen them with my own eyes where, a lodge will say, well, yeah, that was 80 years ago. It's just a brother, and, he was a member of this lodge, and, that's fine. We're not going to hoard all this information and all this artifact. But in my personal perspective, every brother is important, and every brother who has been a member of this craft, who has moved on, is important and has a story to tell. And though you may not be able to have room to keep everything, again, it's important to take photographs, digitize it, take a picture, because that brother may offer a piece of information of a piece of that puzzle that's been missing from your history in your lodge. So it's and out of respect, I mean, me personally, at home, I hoard an enormous amount of Masonic stuff, even from an average brother Mason who may not have been a Grand Master, may not have been no Ben Franklin, but that brother is still a brother and still can offer some sort of knowledge, some sort of history. And you'd be surprised what you can find in, that from that brother that may have that particular story based on just being a member of that lodge during that time where you may not have information from that time period. So every bit of information is important, and every bit of information is worthwhile saving, protecting, and ensuring that legacy for the next generation. I mean, brother, one thing I always say is that, we're living in this time now. Masonry is not ours. We're just leasing this fraternity. It's incumbent upon us to, for the short time we're here, to take this craft of Masonry, to make it that much better and leave it for the next generation so that they can have a prosperity and have a future craft. It's not really ours. We don't own it. We're just leasing this craft for the short time we're here. And I think it's very important for us to do our best to ensure the future by properly maintaining and doing our best for the craft here, so that when we do leave and depart this earthly ties here, that we have hopefully left it in better hands than we received it. And hopefully that next generation of Masons can enjoy the same fellowship and enjoyment that we enjoy as in our short time here.
And a lot of what you're talking about also falls on not only at the lodge level, but even smaller at the individual member level. I always, I'm a proponent of, and I've talked about this with guys, especially somebody who is an officer in a lodge, especially secretary or treasurer, not to get morbid, but, do you have a file, if I get hit by a bus, like if you get hit by a bus walking down the street, would somebody be able to take over for you and continue with those operations? And even on for just a member, do you have something, does your family know, if you pass away, where your Masonic items are and where they should be returned? Do you want them returned back to the lodge? Or is there a brother that you want them returned to who can then take them to the lodge? There are so many, and part of it was the time, right? Freemasonry was very different 40, 50 years ago in terms of how it was discussed, even within families. But there are so many phone calls I've gotten and the Windsor Masonic Temple have gotten, like you said, right? I've my father passed away and I found all these Masonic books and I don't know what they are or where they go. You know, in some cases they may have moved and they may be trying to return them to the Masonic temple that wasn't where that father or grandfather was initiated or a member of. Um, and just, you know, taking the time to talk to your family and put it in your will. Like, where did these go? To whom did they go? Do you have a plan of succession? Because if you don't, there's a very good chance you're going to end up in a pawn shop somewhere. And that's if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, you'll end up in a landfill, right? So thinking about those things and writing it down, and obviously, you know, part of that also is talking to your family about if you want a Masonic funeral, Masonic service. But there's part of it on the individual member level too, to make sure that your Masonic items get back to where they need to go, so that information isn't lost.
No, it's true, and it's actually, I'm glad you made that point because I wanted to bring two other points up. Last year, me and my wife made our last will and testament, and we made all our funeral arrangements, so that when we do pass away, that it's all laid out. There's no, well, what did he want, or did he want this? Everything is laid out. Just follow the plan. But incorporated in the will and testament, I also have notes that are attached to it that lay out, not in 100% detail, but lay out that my Masonic items, which I have a lot of because I'm an antique buff and antique collector, so I do buy a lot of books and regalia and all kind of antique Masonic artifacts. But I have it so that it will go back to the lodge. I have some going back to the Grand Lodge, you know, so that we have a museum in our lodge. We have a big Trenton Museum of Masonic Culture in our Trenton Masonic building. So we have a beautiful museum and library there. So I have some artifacts that'll go there. And these are stuff that I, like you mentioned, I bought at antique stores, I bought in pawn shops, I bought on eBay. I've just seen it there and I purchased it. And yes, I do have it written down as to not just where the majority of it is going to go, but I also have contacts, who to contact, where to contact them. They have their number, my lodge. So all that information's on there so that whoever is the trustee or executor of my will be able to say, okay, I'm going to contact, Brother John Doe. Listen, this person passed away, and it was his last will and testament to bequeath all these Masonic artifacts to your care to distribute to these organizations that he so chose. So that's also very important to do, and not only just for the archival part of it, but to maintain that history. The other part is, we're always focusing on digitizing, but we can always focus on taking live narratives. Go to your elder past masters, go to the elders of the lodge, take narratives from these people. We have wonderful opportunities now with technology to audio and videotape. Sit there with a brother Master Mason who's been in the lodge for 70, 80 years, or, my mentor's 98 years old, and he's been documented many times. And during the 1930s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt actually created something called the Federal Writers Project. And it was his intention to capture live narratives from individuals who might have been slaves, from individuals who lived through the Great War, from the Great Depression, from the Great Dust Bowls in the Midwest. He wanted these stories right from the horse's mouth. He didn't want it diluted from children or grandchildren who tell the tales. And it's amazing going through these actual living narratives that I've been able to read many of them and find narratives that deal with masonry. In particular, for instance, there was one incident where a slave was assisted by Masons in a Masonic lodge as he was making his way from the South into freedom. And she had no idea who Masons were or what a Masonic temple was, but she knew that these Masons helped her gain her freedom. So and this is going back to the 1930s. So there's no reason why with today's technology that we shouldn't be going that step further and not just digitizing, but taking live oral narratives or video narratives that we can keep for posterity, which could be used for future reference as well. These members these brethren have been members of these lodges for many years, and they can just recount the story of their life. And that's, we're all, each and one of us is a representative of the craft, and we each have our story to tell. Of course, there's many, but that's also a living narrative that can be kept there for future generations to see and do. And we all get inspired from things we see and hear, in particular from our mentors. You know, when we hear the stories of what they did and what they went through and how they did it, it inspires you to move forward and to think out of the box. You know, there's an old tale that when a person's writing a book, or a writer gets writer's block, sometimes the mentor will tell the mentee, here, start typing this paper I did. And when you feel your own words, start typing away. And sometimes it takes a little push to get you into that right path. And by visually hearing and seeing these narratives can actually help a young brother Mason, as he's coming into the craft, pursue that avenue, pursue a different organization, or pursue a different endeavor that he may want. By hearing these narratives and getting ideas, taking those ideas, formulating them and turning them into his own ideas and moving forward. I mean, there's no greater flattery than having someone, you know, emulate you or take what you've done and make it that much better. And that's what it's all about. It's not about the individual person, but it's all of Masonry as a collective body.
And you know, you brought up and I like that because it's something I've been discussing a lot, right? It can even be the stories of community members, people who are not themselves Masons, but have a story that connects to the Masons, to a lodge, to a building. You know, I'm in Windsor, which is right across the river from Detroit. But you think about the Detroit Masonic Temple, right? And you know, one story, he's not a Mason, but you think about Jack White, with the White Stripes, right? Who, I mean, his mom, you know, was a single mom, I believe, but I know she, you know, her only source of income was working at the Masonic Temple.
Correct.
He started off playing concerts there, right? And so, you know, Freemasonry is very important to his life, even though he himself is not a Freemason. And gathering those stories as well, even my Masonic Temple, I talked about at the start, right? The Windsor Masonic Temple, it's been around for 100 years, so it's 100-year worth of weddings and dances and graduations and people passing through the doors. You know, it's a part of the character and the history of the city, and you want to try to document those stories as well if you can, because, right, Freemasonry doesn't just matter to its members. It maybe matters the most to its members, but Freemasonry does matter to the communities in which it's located at large, and that should be documented and celebrated, I think, as much as possible.
Absolutely, Freemasonry has been a big part of all communities in our nation on many different levels. So it's an integral part of the craft of our American culture here. So it's very important to keep that history. Not only that, but it also dispels with the fears and the conspiracies. When people really get to see the heart and soul of what Masonry has done and is doing, and what hopefully will continue to do in the future, you know, when you hear the positive stories, unfortunately, whenever you turn the television on, everything you hear is conspiracy theories, and you know, they know the secrets and the treasures. And I mean, I've been a Mason 14 years and I haven't found any treasures yet, but I'm still looking. But
Me too. Me too.
But again, it's you know, should we be talking about dispelling those myths and fears, or should we be talking about what we have done for the community, what we have done for our nation and our people, even those who have benefited from the craft of Masonry, even though they weren't Masons themselves, and may not even been aware that. I mean, how many children go through the shrine hospitals that pass through there, who their families go through there, who aren't Masons, probably don't even know what Masonry is. A lot of people don't even connect the Shriners with Masonry, and yet they're benefiting from this organization, this fraternal organization, this brotherhood, who is there to serve not just ourselves, but also, more importantly, the community. So again, it's very important to let everybody know and let the community know what we're here for and what we do, and that it's not just, you know, a group of guys meeting behind closed doors trying to rule the world, but actually that our whole basis is to help defend and protect our nation, our laws, our way of life, our freedoms, our tolerance, our equality and justice, but also to help the average, member of the community who may not be a Mason and probably has no idea what Masonry is. That even that Masonry is, by another way of extension, helping that family out without them even knowing it.
Well, and it's just such a part of the tapestry of American life for decades. It was kind of so ubiquitous. It was almost just part of the background. When something is, it's like air. It's so ubiquitous you don't notice it. I think of Copperhead Road by can't think of the artist name now. Steve Earle Jones. Anyways, the song Copperhead Road, right? It's that everybody loves to play that at weddings, and in that song, right, he mentions his dad. Or his granddad purchased a Dodge at the Masonic Lodge at the auction they had there, right? It's where they had the police auctions, right? It was just a part of their communities and just ubiquitous in it, and so much so that it could be mentioned in a song about small town American life as just a commonplace thing. Everybody would understand what was meant by it, right, at the time. So yeah, I think documenting those stories is really important, and I definitely would commend you and all the historians out there for all your work in doing so, because just like you said, right, we got to think not just about Freemasonry today, but 100 years from now, and they're going to be looking back at what we keep and the documents that we preserve when they are making decisions about Freemasonry in the next 100 years.
Absolutely, my brother. It's very important, and I know you're there in Windsor, Canada, so you're not far from Niagara on the Lake Lodge, and just to give you a little story, that to show you the importance of that lodge, when after the Revolutionary War here in America, when John Graves Simcoe was given the leadership of Upper Canada at that time in the late 1700s, he in 1793 started a government on behalf of the king. They started a new parliament. And they had nowhere to go and nowhere to meet, but because many of them were Masons, they decided to have their first parliamentary meetings in the Masonic Lodge of Niagara on the Lake. And during the time they met there, they passed one of the earliest known legislative laws to end slavery. That's why Canada became such a haven for slaves in the South here, because Canada was one of the first parliamentary legislative bodies or countries around the world that actually put forth legislation to stop slavery. I know Haiti rebelled and many other countries rebelled, but Canada is very important. And people don't realize that within the halls of a Masonic Lodge in the building, that history occurred in our halls in the building, not as a Masonic Lodge tiled, but nonetheless within those halls of Masonic building. And I have no doubt that the brethren who were there or a part of that parliamentary organization of their constituency were influenced by the principles and the teachings of Masonry. And I got to say that probably the greatest core value, the greatest teaching we have that we can offer the world is that our fraternity, although it may be a perfect fraternity made up of imperfect men, allows men to come together regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of whatever God you profess or preach to, whatever your culture, your tongue, your custom. And that's the real beauty of Freemasonry. And I think that's been at the heart and soul of who we really are, and why so many organizations, in particular religions, have detested Masonry, because we allow men to enter a lodge on the level, nobody above anybody. We are free-thinking men who are allowed to agree or disagree with each other. But at the end of the day, we have that respect, that mutual respect for each other, and we never break that chain of union that we have between each other. And I think that overflows and overspills into the communities, into our local and state and national governments. I think that does influence many around the world, and has influenced many around the world, in particular here in Canada and the United States. And that's very important. A lot of people don't make those connections and realize how important Masonry has been woven into the fabric of not just any nation, but the fabric of individual freedoms, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, toleration, equality, justice, truth. Those are the backbone of our fraternity. And there's not too many organizations or fraternities that instill that. And that is our basis. And that's what makes us who we are. And I believe that many have benefited from that without even realizing that Masonry was behind it in a small part, in a small way.
Very, very well said, and very, very true. So, you work nights and it is very early in the morning. So I know next for you is going to be sleep, but after sleep, or probably food, then sleep. But after that, what's next for you? When do you head out to, I'm guessing you arrive on site at the Hyatt, if I recall correctly, a couple days early. Like, when do you head down and when do you actually get started on, when do you find yourself in Virginia? When do you get started on the actual setup for Masonic Week 2022?
Well, I start later on this afternoon. I'll start arranging and packing some of my stuff. My living room is completely filled with all the stuff I have to bring down. But I will leave tomorrow morning. Sometime probably before noon, I'll leave, and I'll arrive in Alexandria sometime late afternoon. And then the journey begins Tuesdays. Tuesday, I start preparing. We start preparing with the hotel. We have meetings with the hotel. We start organizing the suites and organizing the hospitality suites and organizing myself with my staff when they arrive on Tuesday to begin the process of events leading forward all the way until it ends on Sunday. But again, it's been a great pleasure, especially this year, because our most venerable Sovereign Grand Master is Mohammed A. Yatim, who's not just the Sovereign Grand Master of USA, but is also one of my dearest and closest friends. He's a member of my lodge, so it's been a real honor and privilege to be able to work under him this year and doing this tenure as a brother who represents from here in New Jersey and my own mother lodge and my own mother A&B council. So I look forward to joining him on Wednesday and as everybody starts coming in to begin the opening of the week. So it's almost like the opening of the Olympics. For us, we prepare, and then Wednesday is the big opening, and we look forward to it. I think if you ask anybody that goes down there who has been there, I think they look forward to that fellowship, just to get together, do the work, do the business. There's things that have to be done, but it's fun. I mean, if it's not enjoyment, if it's not enjoyable, if it's not convenient, then what's the purpose? I mean, we all do this. We all volunteer. I'm volunteering here after a long night work because I want to do this for you, and I'm thankful for your kind invitation. But again, I'm doing it because I enjoy doing it and I love it. If it becomes a chore, if it becomes a hardship, then why do it? Why? You have to put your heart and soul into it, and you have to enjoy it. You have to make the best out of it and receive the best out of it and give that passion for that fraternity. And I get it meeting the brethren like I'm sitting here with you, even though we're several thousand miles away. I still enjoy being here with you, and that's what I get out of it: the bonds, the fellowship, the friendships that we make that last a lifetime, and that is irreplaceable. And that's if that's the last thing I get out of it, then I've done my bit.
That is awesome to hear. So yeah, I will let you get some rest because you're going to need it. Everybody watching this, though, it's not too late. This is being released on February the 6th, which means it is not too late at all. Go to the link if you want. In the description, go to the link, register. It's super affordable, and we mentioned at the start, it's you couldn't have a more convenient location. It's right next to Ronald Reagan Airport. You can fly in from anywhere and you're right there. So it's not too late. Check it out, register, and if you get the chance, it's just another way to expand your Masonic career and your Masonic experience. So, Right Worshipful Sir, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you taking the time to appear on the podcast.
Thank you, my dear brother, and hopefully it won't be the last. And I appreciate the kind invitation. And whenever I can do for you in the future, please let me know. Thank you. Appreciate it.